It's an honor to have Sparta selected as the site of this town hall meeting. And on behalf of the Township Council and administrative staff, I'd like to welcome our distinguished guests, elected officials, and most importantly, you, the public. The governor welcomes these opportunities to hold the town hall meetings because it gives him an opportunity to present his policies and reform initiatives that help us govern and manage our tax so that we can provide services to you, the public. And just as importantly, it's important that the public has access to the governor so that they can ask questions of these policies and reform initiatives. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome and present to you the governor of the state of New Jersey, Christie.
All right, thank you, everybody. Please be seated. Thank you. Mayor, thank you. Thank you for welcoming me back to Sparta. I appreciate all of you coming today very much, taking the time to do this. This is my 137th town hall meeting as governor of New Jersey. And you know, as I've told folks over time, the reason I began to do this when I first became governor was that, you know, life as governor can at times become a little bit isolating. Let me explain quickly how. You know, when I was elected in November 2009, what happens is immediately when the networks call the race, you know, you walk out of this hotel room. I was in Parsippany. Just a normal guy. You walk out and there's 3 state troopers standing there. And you say, hey guys, good to see you. Congratulations, sir, thank you very much. And I was going to walk down to Kim Guadagno's hotel room to congratulate her. And so I went to walk and they started to follow me. And I said, oh no guys, it's okay, I'm just going down to Kim's hotel room, so you guys don't have to come. They go, of course, sir. I kept walking and they kept following me. And they have been following me ever since. And what happens here, you ride in these black Suburbans, you never come in the front door of any place anymore. I know every kitchen in every hotel in New Jersey. You walk through kitchens, I get to know all the kitchen workers, that's really good. You make your way through there and all of a sudden you walk into a room like this. Like today I came in the back door here and all of a sudden you walk through a curtain and here you are, all of you are here. It can keep you away from folks, even on the weekends. You know, these guys are with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They have a trailer on the front lawn of my house where they stay. And no matter where I go, they're with me. So, you know, you all on the weekends, we all have our errands to do, the things we don't get to do because we're working all week. You know, go to the deli or go to the dry cleaners or go to the bank or all the different stuff that we do. They do that with me. So, you know, it doesn't make you the most approachable guy in the world when you have the guys in the dark suits with the things in their ears, you know, standing around you. So what I thought about was doing these meetings allows me to meet the people that I work for and allows you to have the time to ask me any questions you want to ask me about whatever is on your mind. And that's good for both of us. You get to know what I'm thinking and I get to hear what you're thinking and what you're concerned about. And so we started to do them back in 2010, and we've been doing them ever since. And it's hard for me to imagine that we're now at 137 times I've stood in front of a group like this, but none of this, by the way, would work out if you didn't show up. So thank you for showing up, because that's really important, really important. Mary Pat and I love doing this job. And she and I were together this morning for a meeting we had to do together before I came up here. And she wanted me to make sure she tells you guys something. Now, the kids have been honest about this, And last summer we were busy doing other things, but we can't wait to come up here for the Sussex County Fair. The whole family's going to come up. And it's really, we've been here a number of times. It's one of the really great events in New Jersey. And it puts an enormously bright and deserved spotlight on Sussex County and the things that develop the traditions of our state. And so we're really excited and anxious to come up here. I'm going to make Senator Orho walk me around, you know, and make sure he comes and we walk around together, and all the other leaders up here in Sussex County. Of course, the guy who has been my tour guide in Sussex County ever since I started running for governor is here this morning. I then dragged him down to Trenton. It's a short commute, right? No big deal. I dragged him down to Trenton. He has been one of the most outstanding members of our cabinet, and somebody who I'm thrilled is a native son of Sussex County and has done a great job running the Department of Labor. Commissioner Wirtz is here this morning. Hal, thank you. You know, we got some things to talk about, so let's talk about that and then get to your questions. It is mid-May in New Jersey, which means the legislature is getting ready to come back to town, and it's time to get a budget done. Always a fun time of year for me, I can guarantee you. And this year, again, particularly interesting when you think about where we've been and where we are now. Remember where we were in 2010 when I got here. The budget had an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget. And that was after taxes and fees had been increased in the 8 years before I became governor 115 times. You know it, you felt it. And property taxes in New Jersey in the 10 years before I became governor had gone up 70% in 10 years. Spending in the 8 years before I became governor at the state level had gone up 56%. They were on a taxing and spending spree in Trenton that nobody seemed willing or able to stop. And we came in and said we were going to do it differently. And what's happened since then? They've sent me 6 different tax increases over the course of the last 5.5 years, and I've vetoed every one of them, and the Republicans in the legislature have sustained those vetoes. So you haven't had tax increases at the state level in the last now 6 budgets. Second, I said I was going to make government smaller because the only way you can spend less is to make government smaller. We have 8,500 fewer employees today on the state payroll than on the day I walked in, and we haven't laid anybody off. That's all been done by attrition, right? Doing it the smart way. And we spend $2.5 billion less in discretionary spending today than we spent 8 years ago. That means everything other than pensions and health care and debt service is $2.5 billion lower today than it was in fiscal year 2008. And that's not Washington math, by the way, where it's a smaller increase than was anticipated. That's actually less money, $2.5 billion less being spent now in the budget I just proposed than 8 years ago. And so we've tried to make things more reasonable in Trenton, and we've succeeded. And the last thing is on property taxes. Average of a 7% increase a year for 10 years. Now over the last 5 years, property taxes have only gone up 10%. Now, I know they still went up 10%, and nobody's happy about that statewide, but think about going from a 7% average increase a year to a 2% average increase a year. That's because we put the property tax cap in place. That's because we capped the amount of interest arbitration awards that could be awarded to public sector workers. You know, restricting the amount that we spend, because I don't have a magic money tree that I pick this money off to spend in Trenton. It's your money, and we got to spend less of it. And we've continued to do that and made government smaller in the course of time doing it. And so you would think that having done all that, that we're in pretty good shape, but there's still the deadly sins of the past that we have to fix. And they're the things that we do, the promises that politicians make to folks and have made to folks with no understanding of how they're going to be paid for. And those big things right now are pensions, and health insurance for public workers. So let's talk about that real quickly. Health insurance for public workers. Not me, the Obama administration has characterized the type of health insurance that we provide to public workers in New Jersey as Platinum Plus. And since I have it, I can tell you it's Platinum Plus. 7 weeks ago, Mary Pat called me on the way home from Trenton, and she said, hey, I gotta go to a Bridget basketball practice. You gotta go pick up the prescriptions at the drugstore on your way home. So I stopped at the drugstore in our town to pick up the prescriptions, and we picked up 4 of them, and the total cost to me was $12. Now listen, everybody, I don't know what those prescriptions really cost, but it wasn't $12. That's the kind of plan that we're providing for public sector workers all across the state. And before I became governor, they paid nothing towards that insurance, nothing towards their premiums, 0. The public paid all of it. In 2011, we did pension and health benefit reform that put in a sliding scale, so the more you make, the more you pay towards your premiums. Seemed fair. But even with all that, the total cost of those health insurance policies today per employee is $31,500. Think about that. Just the health insurance alone, it's so rich, it's $31,500. And here's the problem. Not only is it a problem in terms of how we pay for it today, but with Obamacare in place, they're gonna put a tax on what they call Cadillac plans. And if you're giving a plan that's richer than what they think you should be giving as an employer, and they believe gold should be the top standard that anybody gives, we're at Platinum Plus. Here's what it's gonna mean for the state of New Jersey. This is just state government as an employer. We will have to pay a tax when it's fully phased in of $750 million a year to the federal government because we provide insurance at that level. We get nothing in return for that, by the way. It's just a $750 million check we're gonna have to write. And by the way, that's not where it ends. Because if your county government's giving those type of benefits, they're gonna have to write a check. If your municipal government is writing those kind of benefits, they're sending a check also. It will run nearly $1 billion at every level of government if we continue down this path. We simply can't afford to do it, everybody. And by the way, it's health insurance that's better than the health insurance any of you in this room are getting and paying significantly more for than what folks in the public sector are paying for. I want them to have good health insurance. I mean, for the next 2.5 years, I'm one of them. So I want to have good health insurance too. I've got 4 children and a wife, and I want to have good health insurance. But this is ridiculous now. It costs much too much. Do you know that the state of New Jersey picks up the cost for the health insurance for retired teachers? This year in this state budget, the cost of that health insurance just for retired teachers in New Jersey is $1 billion. $1 billion. So the costs here are exorbitant. They're out of control. Add to it then the pension problem. The average pension for a public worker in New Jersey is over $39,000 a year. The average in the other 26 states, or the other 49 states, is $26,000 a year. You're thinking, does he really think there's only 27 states? No. I do know there's 50. The average in the other 49 states is $26,000 a year. So our pensions are $13,000 a year richer. Why? Well, because we pay people more money. We pay more people more money in the public sector than other states do. In fact, there was a report that came out just a few weeks ago that said we now have the highest paid police officers in America. The average police salary in New Jersey, average, that means there's as many more than this as there are less than this number. So get ready, $92,000 a year is the average police salary now in New Jersey. And so pensions are calculated for everybody off of their salary. Now, we reformed pensions in 2011. Senator Orho, Assemblywoman McHose, we worked together to make sure that this got done in 2011, and we made the situation better. We increased what public employees have to pay towards their pensions. We increased the penalty for early retirement. We got rid of cost of living adjustments. And we raised the retirement age because everyone's living longer. That's a good thing. It's a good thing we're living longer, but if we're living longer, we have to work longer. And so we did those things, and those things saved $120 billion for the taxpayers over the next 30 years. Despite that, we still have a huge problem, and underfunding somewhere between $35 and $40 billion on the pension fund. You know, we need to correct that problem. That's a problem I inherited because we've paid more into the state pension system than any administration in history. In fact, we paid $4.2 billion into the pension system. The last 5 governors before me, over 15 years, paid a total of $3.4 billion. So we paid $800 million more in 5 years than they paid in 15. That's a problem. The other problem is all the promises that were made of how rich these benefits were, and nobody figured out how to pay for them. So now the chickens are coming home to roost. And I'm not here just to tell you about the problem. We put forward a second plan that I had an independent commission come up with that said we could fix it without cutting anybody's pensions. The way to fix it is this: take the health benefits of all the public sector workers in the state from Platinum Plus down to Gold. If we did just that, the savings per year would be $3 billion. You take that $3 billion and you put it towards the pension fund every year. That would help us to pay off the unfunded liability and keep everybody's pensions at the level that they were promised. I also say let's turn over the pension funds to the unions. Let them run them. Get away from the politicians. Don't let the politicians deal with them anymore. Don't let them set benefit levels. Don't let them make promises that they can make in a campaign to get a vote and then not worry about having to pay for. Give it to the unions. That's their folks. Let them make the determinations on what to do with the pensions. Let them make the determination on how to deal with the level of benefits. And if we do those things, we'll be able to fix this problem. And I don't think it's any national secret that I have had my conflicts at times with the teachers union in this state. I think all of you are probably aware of that. But starting near the end of last year, we started in quiet, secret negotiations with the teachers union to try to get everyone on board with this plan. And in February, they actually signed a framework with us to say, this general framework we're willing to consider, and let's try to finalize the deal. And then, just a few weeks ago, they announced they're walking away. They don't want to negotiate anymore. They want everything that they're getting now, and they don't want to give anything back. No negotiations. Listen, everybody, if I'm willing to negotiate with them, they should certainly be willing to negotiate with me. And in the end, it's their members who are going to pay the price, because we cannot afford this system. We simply can't. We're one of the highest tax states in America to begin with. And let me make you understand, if we were going to make the full payment to the pension, which would be about $4.5 billion per year, here's what we'd have to do to your taxes to afford to pay for it. We'd either have to, one or the other, and if any of you are enthusiastic about either of these, raise your hands when I say it. We'd have to raise the sales tax from its current 7% to 10%. Anybody like that? No, I didn't think so. Okay, let's try alternative 2, because really there's only 2 taxes that generate a lot of money in the state: the income tax and the sales tax. Those are the 2 biggest ones. Corporate business tax generates a few $1 billion, but it's not big enough to make the difference we need to make here. Second one is the income tax. We would have to raise the income tax on everyone in New Jersey, not just some people. Everybody who pays the income tax would have to go up 29%. Don't like that one either, huh? Okay. Because what you're going to hear over the course of the next 6-8 weeks from the Democrats in the legislature is, the governor should make the payment. Okay, I'll make the payment. Where's the money coming from? Happy to make the payment. I've made more payments to the pension than anybody. So where's the money coming from? They're going to say to you, let's tax the rich people. Okay, we tax the rich people pretty hard as it is already. In fact, so hard that last year, 10,000 millionaires left New Jersey. 10,000 millionaires left New Jersey. They want to tax them even more, okay? They're going to tell you that that raise is somewhere around $600 million. I think that's probably exaggerated. It's probably closer to 450 to 500 million. But let's even give them their 600 million. Okay? Where are you getting the next billion, one, for the payment you have to make this year, and the next 2.5 billion you need to make the full payment that they say they're going to make? You cannot get it just from taxing rich people. They're going to tax you. When you hear the leaders of the Democratic Party stand up over the next 6 weeks and say the pension payment must be made and we will make no changes in the pension program or the health benefit program, then your question to them has to be, how much do you think you're going to get away with taking out of my pocket to pay off your public sector union friends? Because that's where they're coming, everybody. There are not enough rich people in New Jersey to pick up this tab all by themselves, because you know what rich people do? First of all, there's not enough of them, even if we wanted to. But rich people get up and leave, because they can. They can sell their house, and they can move someplace else where the taxes are lower. So that's not the solution to the problem. And you'll hear them. They had some protest on the front steps of the State House this week. They said, make the payment. Great, happy to. Give me the money. I'm happy to make the payment if you have the money, but they won't tell you where they're going to get the money from. And beware, man. I'm telling you where the money would come from to fix the pension problem. Lower the health benefits, take that savings, put it to the pension. That's what we do. I'm telling you how I do it. Now that makes some people unhappy, right? So it's not like that's the easiest thing in the world to say. For all these people who are getting these amazing health benefits, I'm telling them health benefits are going to be less. Ask them where they're going to get the money from. When they don't tell you, what's that tell you? It's from you, man. They only don't tell you where they're getting the money from when they're going to take it from you. Don't fall for it. And here's the one thing I can guarantee you. I'm not going to let them. I did not get elected and work as hard as I did over the last 5.5 years, controlling taxes in this state, creating new private sector jobs. Over 180,000 new private sector jobs have been created in my 5 years. In the 10 years between 2000 and 2009, you know what the private sector job growth was in New Jersey? Zero. Zero net private sector jobs when the Democrats were in charge. Zero. Why? Because they jacked up taxes, they jacked up spending, they jacked up regulation, and they drove business out of this state. Now those are the facts, everybody. And now I hear the Senate president complaining there's not enough jobs in the state. Well, amen, Steve. I'm with you. There aren't enough jobs. Why don't you reduce taxes so people actually want to create jobs here? But he can't do that, because if he did that, he'd have to go back to his Democratic constituency and say no to them about something. And one of the things I've done a lot over the last 5.5 years is say no. It's never pleasant as a politician. Anybody who walks up to me, they always are asking for something, right? That they genuinely believe is a good thing, and probably is. But my job is to say no. Because when I say yes, the only way I can say yes is by spending your money. It's not mine. The part that's mine is only a small part that I pay, just like you. So that's what you're going to hear over the next 6 weeks. So get ready. Get ready. And in the end, I had a guy who I saw recently who said to me, why do you want to cut my pension? I said, I don't want to cut your pension. The plan I put forward doesn't cut your pension. So when your friends who are teachers or police officers or firefighters or other public sector workers come to you and say, why does the governor want to cut my pension? Look at him and say, he doesn't want to. But you know what he doesn't also want to have happen? He doesn't want your pension system to go bankrupt. Because if it does, you'll get nothing. Look at what happened in Detroit. Look at what happened at General Motors. These places went bankrupt because of these pensions. Look what's going on in Illinois. This is coming to a theater near you. And the fact is, I'd love to be able to tell everybody that they can get everything they want. That's not the way it works. It's not the way it works in your house. It's not the way it works in my house. And we cannot run the state budget that way. Because if we do, all it's going to mean is there's going to be less money in your house. So that we can pay for someone to get Platinum Plus health benefits? Really? It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And I'm tired of hearing, this is what I was promised. There are lots of people in this room who were promised lots of things. And when the economy doesn't work out, you can't go to your boss and say, hey, wait, ho, I was promised this. You can, but it's not going to make a difference. So tired of hearing that I was promised this and I was promised that. Everybody's got to be in this together. And nobody in this room who works in the private sector is just getting this level of health benefits. Nobody in this room who's in the private sector is getting a pension. And the fiction that we no longer pay public sector workers the amount they need to get paid, and that's why they get these benefits in return, is a fiction. When you have the average police officer making $92,000 a year. So we need to tell each other the truth, everybody. And I'll end with this and take your questions. The easiest thing in the world for me to do, I got 2.5 years left, right? I can never run for governor again. You've elected me twice. For some of you, you may want to vote for me again. For some of you, you may go, thank God, he's leaving, right? Whatever your sentiment is. The fact is, I can't run again. The easiest thing for me to do would be just to ride this baby out. I could put a Band-Aid on this for the next, after this budget, I got 2 more budgets to do. I could put a Band-Aid on it, make certain accommodations, turn my head, and not talk about this. But that's not what you elected me for. I am not under the illusion that you elected me for my charm and good looks. That is not why you all elected me. You elected me because you thought a number of years ago that I was just tough enough to do this. And I'm not going to let you down in my last 2.5 years on this job by taking the easy way out. And the folks who do this, that's what they're doing. So now let's get to the fun part. You get to ask questions, I get to answer them. There are only 4 rules for my town hall meetings. Now, some of you may have read, I've been doing some town halls recently in New Hampshire. And it's interesting because, you know, a lot of New Jersey press will follow me up there, and they say, you don't go through the 4 rules in New Hampshire like you do in New Jersey. Why don't you go through the 4 rules? I say, because New Hampshire's not New Jersey. So here's the thing, the 4 rules for the New Jersey town hall meetings. Here we go. Rule number 1 is you raise your hand and I call on you. That's the way it works here. We don't make you write down your questions beforehand and hand them to some staff member, and then they look at them and say, which ones does he like to answer and which ones doesn't he? And just gives me the good, easy ones. You raise your hand. I don't know who you are. I call on you. You can ask me an easy one or a hard one, whatever's on your mind. But don't yell a question out. See, if you yell out questions, I ignore them. And this is not because I'm governor. I have a finely tuned ability to ignore yelled out questions. And I developed that ability because I have 4 children. Right? Any parent in this room knows this. You can ignore this. It's great. You just learn it. You're at the dinner table. They're all yelling. You just keep eating. Don't worry. When they eventually get it together, you'll answer their questions. So don't yell them out. And when you raise your hand and I call on you, rule number 2, please don't start your question until you get a microphone. Okay, there are folks of my staff running around here with microphones. May take a minute or so. They'll get a microphone to you. And when you get that microphone, please tell me your name and where you're from. Because I don't want to say, hey, you with the red tie. I'd rather use your name when we're talking to each other this way, right? So give me your name and where you're from. Rule number 3 is really less a rule than it is a bit of advice. When you get this microphone in your hand, you will feel an undeniable, indescribable, gravitational-like pull to give a speech. Take my word for it. It happens, all right? So it's okay. You came here today. I'm happy to listen to your speech for a while, but we have 450 people here today. And I want to get to as many questions as I can. So I have come up with some subtle social signals to let you know that it's time to move along, right? So the first is this: I will come over to one of these stanchions, whichever one is closest to you, and I will lean on it. Now, this is not the signal. This is the prelude to the signal. So, because I want to give you some time to get ready to kind of wrap it up a little bit. So I'll just lean on this for you, right? I'm not looking at you. The signal is what comes next. If you keep going, then I start to go, That is the signal. That is the signal to wrap it up. Get to your question. I get it. Let's go. So I won't do it. Nobody's going to be embarrassed. I won't say, hey, where's your question? Just Then you'll know. It's time to get to the question. Fourth rule is this. We have today, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 cameras, not counting iPhones. We got 12 cameras here today. Now, I've been doing these for a long time, as I told you, and you all may have seen over time, either in person or on the computer or on TV, some of my more interesting interactions with my people at these kind of events. And that's fine. You know, you get all different kinds of questions here, and some people like you and some people don't, and that's why this country is great. Everybody gets to come. You know, you weren't screened on the way in. We didn't ask you, you know, if you liked me or you didn't like me, and if you didn't, we didn't tell you to leave, and all the rest of that. So we can get all different kinds of questions here, and I have no problem with disagreement. If you disagree with me and I call on you, get up and disagree. That's fine. But let's make it a respectful disagreement. If you make it a respectful disagreement, I will disagree with you respectfully in return. However, when there's like 12 cameras here, that has an effect on certain people. I'm used to it now. But for people who are new to it, it has an effect on them potentially. They begin to think, oh man, today's my day. Today is the day I'm going to become famous. Today is the day I'm going to be seen on TV by my family, my friends, my coworkers, and you know the way the media works. There is only one sure way that you will get on TV, and that is take the governor of New Jersey out for a walk, right? And since we're all from New Jersey, we know what that means. Take me out for a walk. So here's the deal. You want to take me out for a walk, that's fine. But we are all from New Jersey. And what that means is if you give it, you are getting it right back, okay? So let's get to work. Let's go. Who's first? Let's see. Let's go to the young lady in the back right there. They're making their way around to you. Here he is, coming behind you.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for coming to Sparta.
Thank you.
I'm Alexandra Miller. I'm from Sparta and I work in Sparta. I'm a psychologist, so I do psychotherapy, and occasionally I refer out to psychiatrists. There is a big shortage of psychiatrists in this area and in New Jersey. I'm asking if you might consider prescription privileges for psychologists as a possible solution.
Interesting. You know, I don't know. I'd want to talk to my Commissioner of Health about it and see what their reaction is to it. I do know that what you say is true. There is a shortage in New Jersey of psychiatrists, and there is a need for folks who are going through that type of therapy at times to be prescribed medication to help them through those things.
Right.
And so, you know, it's the first time it's ever been raised to me, so I don't know how I feel about it. And I know, this much I know, I don't know enough about it to be able to make a decision. So why don't we do this? I'll, my guy, give you a card, you send your information so we can get back in touch with you and get your input on it as well, on the specifics of it and what you think the good parts are and whatever downsides they need to be thinking.
Yes.
And I'll talk to my other folks as well. I do think that we've got to be careful, and there may be a way to kind of narrow the prescription writing ability to just the areas that
Yes.
you know you're particularly concerned with.
Yes,
because,
it would be just for psychotropic meds.
Yeah, because
yes.
you know as you know, the prescription pad is a really powerful thing, and we have a lot of problems in this state with the overuse and abuse of prescription drugs, and I don't want to add to that. But maybe there might be a way to give some narrow privileges. So I'm willing to think about it and talk about it. So why don't
Gladly.
you
Thank
give us
you
your
for
information?
inviting me.
And I appreciate
Okay.
you raising the issue. Thank you very much. All right. I love the people who try new things. Some woman just put up a sign that says, "Pick me." All right, let's go to you right there. Let's see who's coming. Here he comes. He's coming from right over here.
Thank you. Welcome. My name is Francine Brink. I live in Sparta, and I work in a school district in Morris County. I am the certifying officer for the pension for that school district. The big concern is for the members in the state pension that are not TPAF, that are PERS.
Right.
Would NJEA, if they agree to, take control of those members?
It depends. It depends. You know, since they're not negotiating with me anymore, it's hard for me to tell you. But the concept of what we put forward is that the union that represents you would be the union who would control your money.
Right. A lot of the members are not in any union.
Right. And so if that were the case, we would have to negotiate with the unions for management of the monies of people who are not their members. And so the logical thing would be, if you're in a school system, that you'd probably be under an NJEA management. If you were in outside of that, whether it was, you know, non-law enforcement, if you were represented by the CWA or AFSCME or some of the other unions, we'd have to work that part of it out. But we're not negotiating right now, so I don't know what they'd be willing or not willing to do. But so you understand where the concept is from my point, I think part of the problem that's been created here, that you see doesn't happen in the private sector all that often, is that when union leadership has to be in charge of union pensions, they have a fiduciary duty to make sure that those pensions are at a stable, sustainable level. And if they don't, the government can come in and go after those union leaders to make sure that they do. When the government's controlling it themselves, there's no one to go after the government. And when we don't fund it, there's no one to go after us because we haven't funded it. So what I want to do is set up the kind of relationship they have in the private sector where there's a tension. Mm-hmm. And that those people who are responsible be responsible for it. And if you put the government in charge of it and the government acts irresponsibly, as has happened here over the course of time, there's no recourse. So I'd like to change that system once we reform the system. And that's the concept of why I'd like to do that. But you're right that there will be some people who will be kind of in the cracks, for lack of a better phrase. And so we got to make sure that we cover those people as well. And whether it's, you know, a voluntary assignment or voluntary agreement, rather, of the union, certain unions to take over those folks, or in the agreement, an assignment by the government that if you want this money to be able to manage it, you need to take these folks. It's one or the other. But we won't let anybody fall through the cracks and be forgotten in that regard. I hope we get to the point where we are negotiating those things, because that would be a good thing for the security of your pension in the long term. But at this point, we haven't gotten to that level of specifics because they walked away from the table.
Okay, thank
But
you.
thanks for your questions. Good point. All right. Yes, sir, on the aisle. Yep.
Bill Getler from Wantage Township. In August 2010, at the Sussex County Farm and Horse Show, we had a conversation. I asked for your help in correcting the corruption in Wantage Township in Sussex County. Vernon, in 2013, I asked you about a letter I'd sent to you. You said you hadn't read it. You would read it, about the corruption in Wantage Township, Sussex County. A couple years later, all we have is worse corruption. I came here today hoping to ask you to do something to help all Republicans, not just Wantage and Sussex County. Would you please resign and take all your cronies and all your corrupt attorneys with you?
Yeah, no, I won't. I won't. And, you know, you're probably confused about what my job is. When I was the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey for 7 years, I spent a lot of time going after corrupt people of both parties and putting them in jail when we could prove that corruption beyond a reasonable doubt. And we won over 130 cases without a defeat during that period of time. As governor, when I get complaints about corruption from anyone, my job is to turn that over to law enforcement. And in both the instances that you talked about, we turned over the information that you provided to the State Attorney General's office. Now, what the State Attorney General's office does from there is up to them, and not up to the political people in the system. It is up to the law enforcement folks who make these decisions, and that's the way it should be. Now, you may be completely convinced that there's corruption in these places that you talked about, but just because you're convinced doesn't make it so. And what we have to do is to turn it over to the professional law enforcement people who make those decisions and bring those cases. And the attorney generals that I've served under me have brought a number of cases on corruption over the course of the time they've served, as has the U.S. Attorney's Office. So it's not my job to do this anymore. My job is to turn it over to the law enforcement folks who do these things and do them under the law, not based upon politics or who we like or who we don't like or what you think or what someone else thinks, but what can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. And so while I appreciate your kind invitation to resign, I'll decline respectfully. And if you have further information that you want to pass on to law enforcement, that is absolutely your right. But I would warn everybody else in the room to remember something, that allegations of corruption and law breaking can be thrown around really easily. All you have to do is have a microphone in your hand and be willing to open your mouth. Proving it is much more difficult, and it should be. Because if you're going to take away someone's liberty and their reputation, you better do it not just on an allegation that someone stands up at a meeting and says, but based upon the law, and make it sure that the government has to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Because you're going to want that for somebody else, because if they come knocking on your door, you're going to want the same constitutional rights that everybody else has. So I appreciate your kind offer very much, but I'll decline. And if you have stuff you want to pass on, as I've done in the past, I'll pass it on. And if law enforcement wants to act on it and believes they're empowered to do so, they will. And if they don't, then they won't.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We would like somebody to do their job.
I will have to say this, that was the most polite request for my resignation I've gotten since I've been governor. Yes, sir, right there. Yep.
Jason Dunn from Montague, New Jersey, up here in Sussex County. In our area, the federal government is taking under a study called, I think it's the Vision 2030 for the Delaware National Water Gap Recreation Area.
Okay.
Makes us
Can you just put the microphone closer to you, because they can't hear you?
questions about the Vision 2030 by the federal government and the Delaware Water Gap. And my question to you is, how involved is the state of New Jersey in this study, and can you advocate for us and make sure a lot of the improvements that they're proposing come on this side of the river, because it really helps the economy up here?
Until you just said it to me, I had never heard of Vision 2030.
That's what I was afraid of. Okay.
Right. So now it could well be that the Department of Environmental Protection and the Commissioner Martin knows about it and is working on it. But what we'll do is we'll get your information. You can now be assured that I'm going to ask somebody about what Vision 2030 is and get informed on it. And we'll work with your legislators up here and with the Commissioner of the DEP to try to make sure that we have a full understanding of it, and that we do advocate for the interests of the folks on the New Jersey side of the Delaware Water Gap. So we'll work with Senator Orho and Assemblyman Space and others to be able to do that, and with the DEP Commissioner. So thanks for raising it for me. That's now two things I didn't know anything about that got raised this morning, which is a good thing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep. Yep. They're coming around behind you.
Hello, Governor. My name is Jerry Johans. I'm from Sparta. My question, I have it written down, but it's not long. My question is about immigration. I don't call what we talk about immigration. I call it an invasion. As everybody knows, all the different things that are going on, people coming into the country. We're changing the whole makeup of our country, that we're no longer based on the principles we started with.
Just put the microphone a little closer to your mouth, because people have trouble hearing you.
Illegal immigrants are getting in-state tuition. I hear some states are giving out driver's licenses. There's sanctuary cities that are opening up the doors for the illegals. All kinds of monetary assistance going to come to him. Our borders are wide open. The Chinese thousands of years ago built a wall, keep their enemies out. We can't do that, apparently. Not to mention they're coming through the front door under the guise of asylum, students, etc., and then they disappear. All of this is going to overwhelm the outcome of the future elections. We all know that. If you do run for the presidency, and and you are elected, what will you do to save our country? Because I'm very afraid what's going to happen in the future.
Okay, few things. First off is, I'm not a guy who has been in favor of building a wall or a fence along the entire southern border, because I think it's too expensive and too inefficient, and I have never seen in the history of the world a wall or a fence that somebody who was determined to get over or around or under it couldn't get over or around or under it. And so I think we need to do different things. There may be certain parts of the border where you need to put a wall or a fence, and I wouldn't be opposed to that. My opposition is to putting it across the entire border. Second, I have to take issue respectfully with your analogy to the Chinese, because you said we do that to keep our enemies out. There's a lot of folks who want to come across our borders who are not enemies. And we need to continue to be a country that encourages immigration in a legal fashion, because I think it's important. It's a country that's been built on immigrants, and that we need to continue to encourage that. Now, you are right, though, that we have to secure our border. That you can't be a sovereign country if you don't have a secure border and an immigration system that controls who can come in and who cannot. So there's a few things I think we need to do. A wall or fence in certain portions makes sense, but just in certain portions, in my opinion. Secondly, we can use technology in other parts, cameras and detectors and other things in certain areas that would allow us to do it in a less expensive and maybe more effective way. Third, we need manpower along certain parts of the border to make sure that we protect it. But fourth, we need to remember why most people come here illegally. Most people come here illegally because they want to work. So if in fact that's the case, and almost all the people that I've spoken to who are here in an undocumented way say they came here to work to try to earn a living, then we've got to use the E-Verify system and make every employer in the country use the E-Verify system to say you can't hire someone who's here illegally. You know, if people who came here illegally were not getting hired, they wouldn't come. And so employers have a responsibility for this too. And you know, some employers do it because they can get that labor cheaper. That's not good for our country. And we need to enforce this against employers as well, very aggressively. And there are some Republicans who don't favor that because it goes against people who create jobs. But in the end, they've got to comply with the law too. Next thing is, we need to have an adult conversation about this situation too. Because we've got all these people who we have permitted in here over the course of time. They are here. And I think there's two things we need to agree on. First, they're not going to self-deport. Right? You know, we heard Mitt Romney talk about this a couple of years ago. Self-deportation is not going to happen. They're not going to leave voluntarily. Secondly, I can tell you as a former law enforcement guy that there are not enough law enforcement officers at the local, county, state, and federal level combined to forcibly deport 12+ million people. So if we agree on those two things, if you say that makes, whether you like it or not, that that's the truth, then we need to have an adult conversation about what do you do? If they're not going to leave voluntarily and you don't have the ability and the finances to forcibly make them leave, then what do we do? And that's the conversation we need to have now in this country. Because until we have that conversation, we're not going to be able to have an immigration system that stops this from happening again, over and over and over again. We need to control who comes in and who does not. And if we don't deal with the problem that we've allowed to happen, our government, both Republican and Democrat, has allowed this to happen. Now we have to fix it. But we can't demagogue it. We have to do this in a way that's smart. Because if somebody gets up here and just says, I agree with you, ma'am, and we're going to get all those 12 million people out of the country, well, your question should be, how? How, right? And no one has an answer for it. So we've got to make sure that we do this in the right, smart, and honest way. And you're right that we have to start with securing the border, because if we don't stop adding to the number, we'll never be able to deal with the overall problem. And then we need to deal next, after you do that, you need to next deal with the people who you've already permitted to be in here. Now, I'll just give you one other comment. You mentioned in-state tuition, and I signed a bill that permits in-state tuition for the children of illegal immigrants. Here's the reason why I signed it. We're already providing those children, by law, with a K-12 education. And on average in New Jersey, we pay $17,700 per pupil per year for that education. Some places it's more, some it's less, but it's a lot of money. And then when these children, many of whom are citizens themselves, were born here, when they then